Welcome to Maximizer CRM Live Advanced Training. This is the agenda that we will be following today. We'll begin by looking at save searches and how to create them, how to use them, particularly for using advanced save searches to create the quick access icon toolbar. And then also I'll go quickly through showing you how to create dashboards, which are a visual representation of a saved search. We'll take a look at creating email templates, which I think is a very powerful tool. Everything that we're going to go through here today is designed to help you save time and make your whole workday and work experience more efficient and effective than it might otherwise be. We'll take a look at action plans, which is another amazing tool. An action plan is really nothing more than a collection of hot lists and occasionally appointments. And the idea with creating an action plan is to let Maximizer remember things for you, remember what you need to do. The classic example I usually use is this. Let's suppose that you have gone to a conference and you've picked up, I don't know, maybe 30, 50, 100 business cards. You want to send information to them. You want to try to convert them from being contacts at a conference to actually being bona fide customers. An action plan is a representation of your sales process. I have to do this task, then this one, then this one, and then this one to finally convert somebody from being just a brand new contact into a customer. And by creating an action plan that's composed of all those steps and then saving it and then applying it to each of those 30 or 50 people who I met at the conference allows me to have Maximizer remind me of what has to be done next in each case to convert them, to take them along that sales process. So an action plan can be a real time saver if you design it well and use it properly. These are the real critical elements that we're going through today. Thereafter, we step into the administration and administrator module a bit, just so you can understand what has to go on in the background. If you're a single user, it's a sort of a thing that you'll do for yourself and you'll have access for it. If you're in a multi-user office, you may have a system administrator who takes care of these things, but it can still be useful for you to know so you can make requests of him or her if you find that you're not getting access to things that you need. Sometimes we'll have situations where we have a contact that's in a company or whatever, and that person decides to go out into business for themselves, and you want to elevate them from their status as belonging to one entity and either move them over to another or elevate them up into their own company and contact situation. I'll show you quickly how to do that, and then I'll also show you how to merge duplicates. It's not a difficult process, and it is something that you will have to do eventually. No matter how careful people are in working with their database, unless they have complete control over it, and in a multi-user office no one person really does, you'll end up with duplicates. Somebody will accidentally or otherwise enter a company that already is there, and you'll want to know how to combine those so that you don't lose information, and you also don't have two elements in your database that are starting on divergent tracks. And finally, we'll take a few minutes and just look at the reporting features in Maximizer, which is how you get to brag to people that you've done a great job. So I'm going to push this out of the way now. I'll bring it back if I need to, and I'm going to log in. And this is the same screen you guys will see when you log into CRM Live. So here I am in my address book, and remember I'm in the address book because I went over to preferences at some point in time, and I went to other preferences, and I went to startup, and I told Maximizer where to start when I open up the program, and I've set to the address book, which is fine. So I cancel out of that, just a quick reminder. So I'm going to go to View Favorite Lists, and I'm going to pull up my short list, which is what I use for training. I'll click Retrieve, and now I've got, 7 entries, 7 displayed, 4 companies, 1 individual, 2 contacts. The first thing I wanted to show you is how to conduct save searches. Now, as you know, using this tab here in Maximizer, this Search tab, I can search for virtually anything in the address book. I'm going to show you how to create an advanced search and save it and use it. So let me go ahead and do a search that I know works. And by the way, over here, you see this quick access area, and I already have a number of saved searches that have been put there. When you first start with your program, this won't exist. And so let me show you what happens there. I'm going to go to Customize. I'm going to remove each one of these. I'll take them all out. I'll click Done. And guess what? That quick access icon bar has disappeared. This is how it probably starts for you when you first open your Maximizer. So together, let's go ahead and do a save search and create that icon bar. So I'm going to click Search. I'll click Advanced Search. Don't be intimidated by this blank screen here. All you have to ever remember when you face a screen like this is that somewhere there'll be an Add button, and when you press it, you get to fill that blank space up. Now I have access to all of my basic fields and my user-defined fields. Under basic fields, I'm going to select city or town. Maximizer remembers I've made that selection. Now I'm going to go into my user-defined fields, and I want to select industry, and I can see it down here, but let's suppose I don't remember where that is. So I'll just start typing it. I'll have Maximizer search for me, finds two examples of industry. The one I want, I believe, is that one there. It's selected. And then I also want a number of employees. Click on that, and I've got my third selection. So every time I made a selection here, Maximizer remembered that. Now when I click OK, Maximizer will bring each of these back to me one more time and ask me to give each of them a starting value. So for city or town, I just like to pick Toronto. When I click Add, it shows up over here. As soon as it shows there, I can click OK. Then on the next one, industry, I'll pick manufacturing. Again, it shows up. Again, I click OK. And then finally for employees, I usually just do a range here of say 1 to 100, relatively modestly sized firms. When I click Add, again they show up here, and again I click OK. Now at this point, I've gone through all three of those search parameters, and Maximizer is now making an assumption, as you can see by this radio button here, that I want to match all of those parameters. In other words, give me every entry that's identified with Toronto, associated with manufacturing, and has employees. That's what I'm really asking for. Down here, I can modify this search. Companies and individuals, yes, they could do that. Probably not contacts, because a contact is associated with an individual or with a company, and it's usually these two entries here that hire people rather than the contact per se. On this side here, I've got by default selected Replace List with Search Results. That means I'm going to send everything that's currently here in my list in my main controlling window back to the filing cabinet, and I'm going to get to see here the results of this search. Let's suppose instead of 7 entries displayed, I had 700. What I might want to do is apply this search to those 700 and in effect narrow the list. In other words, give me everybody in that list of 700 that meets these parameters. On the other hand, I've got 7 here, and if I wanted to use those 7 and do some kind of a project or process with them, I might pick this and add the results of this search to this list here. So I start with 7. Afterwards, I have 7 plus however many responded to that search. I'm going to go with Replace the List with the Search Results just to kind of keep it visually simple as well for us today. And finally, I'm telling Maximizer to search all entries of these types, replace the list with the search results, and match all of my search criteria. When I now press OK, what I'm really doing is validating that search. And I should get, and I do get, 1 entry back. This is what I expect from this sample database that I'm working in. And you'll know your database as well. So by pressing OK, I'm saying, does this search work? And if I get back the result I'm expecting to see, then I have probably at least a 95% confidence level that future searches using that same search will work as well. Now this is important, and the reason I emphasize that is because in my nearly 20 years of working with Maximizer, I don't think I have ever seen the logic behind these searches fail. There have been times when I have not gotten back what I expected to get. So if you ever get back data that's different from what you expect, go back and examine the parameters you're using for searching and how you're using them, because that's where the problem will lie, not in the execution of the logic itself. Now I've got a result that I believe is accurate. Now what I'm going to do is come back to search, to advanced search. I get this dialog box again, only this time I'm going to pull up the last search, which is that one right there, and I'm going to press this button to catalog it. And this allows me to have a saved search catalog. All I have to do is click Add. I'm going to put a couple of asterisks up there. Let's take 3 of them so that it goes to the top of the list or close to it. And this is going to be what? City plus industry plus employees. Now I'm going to put a check mark right here, prompt for values when search is retrieved, and that allows me to generalize that search. So today the city might be Toronto, tomorrow it might be Chicago or Mississauga or Calgary or some other place. the industry was manufacturing, tomorrow it might be IT business or it could be any other thing, and my number of employees could vary. By putting a check mark there, I give myself the ability to change any of those parameters as suits my purposes. Full access I'll keep to me so I can control the search, but I'll give read access to public so anybody else can use it if they want to. And in terms of associated column setup, I think I usually pick this one down here, new setup, so I'll select that for sake of argument, and I click OK. Now I have logged that search into my search catalog, and it's available for me to use anytime. The last thing I'm going to do is click this bar down here that says Add to Icon Bar for quick access. Well, the quick access bar doesn't exist yet, but when I click on it, and then when I go ahead and let's just pick binoculars, when I pick an icon, click Save, immediately quick access is created and the search I've saved shows up there as well. You'll notice in my database here I've got any number of other searches that have been done. For example, all entries from Toronto. I could add that to the icon bar, and I could pick a different icon and click Save, and now it's added there as well. All entries by state. Again, add to the icon bar, put some kind of a symbol, click Save, etc., etc. So I can create as many saved searches and put them into this catalog as I want. I can take as many of those that are there as I want and add them to my quick access bar. The objective of using quick access is really simple. First of all, I'll undo the search I've executed, back to my short list that I start with. You remember and saw how many clicks of the mouse and keyboard and so on it took to actually create this search. I had to go to advanced search. I had to find the parameters I wanted to search on. Once I had those, I had to give them values. Once I had done all of that, I had to test it and then catalog it and so on. Now all I have to do is hover on quick access, select the search I want, one mouse click, and I'm there. Toronto, manufacturing, 1 to 100. Execute the search, I get the one entry that I'm expecting to get. Do the search again another time, and instead of Toronto, maybe this is going to be Chicago, and so on and so forth. I don't have any entries like that, so I won't bother clicking search, but in a real production database, this becomes an incredible time-saving tool. One last thing, I'm up here under quick access. I'm going to customize this. That little one there is one I want to do often, that search, so I'm going to push it up. Now it's gone up one, I'll push up one more, and now it's at the top of my list. I can play around with any of them like that, and as you saw before, I can click an X to remove a search. Once I've done what I need to, I click Done, and I drop out. That's how easy it is to create and save searches and give yourself quick access to them afterwards. The other search I wanted to show you was what I call a note search. And I come down here and click on Notes. I get this dialog box. Now, for sake of argument, I'm just going to put the word insurance there. I'm going to search all dates. I'm going to leave the rest as I see it, and I'm going to click OK. What I'm telling Maximizer to do is this. Maximizer, I want you to go into the database, find every entry that has at least one note with the word insurance somewhere in that note. Highlight that word in yellow and show it to me. If there's an entry that has multiple notes with the word insurance, let me see all of those entries, and again, highlight the word insurance so I can find it quickly. So I click OK, and I get back 3 entries. I'm going over to my notes window here. Like you see me, just click right there. And for all-season insurance, I've got 2 entries here. Well, let me click on this. Of course, it's going to have the word insurance in there because of the company name, Opportunity for All-Season Insurance. And this case number is going to be the same situation. The company's all-season insurance. Let me pick here Gail DuPont, who's not part of that company. And she apparently has 3 entries here, Jan 18-2 and Feb 8-1. Let me click on that particular note. And there's the word insurance. She has an appointment completed actually, with Heather Sloan of All Season Insurance. It doesn't matter that she's meeting with somebody from that insurance company. The fact is that Maximizer has done exactly what I asked it to. It's brought back every note for these people where that word insurance occurs. Now, the thing I wanted to advise you of is this. Right now, I'm seeing only 3 notes for Gail DuPont, and I know perfectly well that there are a lot of other notes in her notes window that I should be able to see, but I don't see anywhere to undo this search and get out of it and see those notes. What you have to remember is to come over to the right here and click on this filter. When you do that, you get this note in red. A note search has been performed. In order to undo that search, press the OK button, which will apply the filter, that's what this is, the filter, and change the notes displayed in the note following window. When I click OK, I get to see all the rest of the notes. There's this one here. If I click on that, there's the word insurance, but you'll notice it's no longer highlighted for me because I have completely undone that note search. Just by the by, probably covered for you in basic, but if I want to, I can come back to this filter and I can decide what kind of notes I want to see. I may only want to look at manual notes or task notes or outgoing calls or incoming calls. I can uncheck all, select the ones that I want to see, click OK, and the Program Maximizer will filter out all the rest of the notes and only show me the ones I want. In addition, I can select the date range for which I want to view these notes. Maybe in some of these cases I've got just literally hundreds of notes. So what I want Maximizer to do is only show me the last 30 days worth of notes, and I only want to see the incoming calls and outgoing calls. If that were the case, I would click OK. I'll cancel out of this dialog box for now. Now what I want to show you next is dashboards, because as I mentioned to you, when I come down here to search and to advanced search and go into my catalog, I have a lot of different saved searches that have been performed. It may be that I want to look at any one or more of these and look at them visually rather than simply seeing the result of a search. Let me go do that again. Quick access, there's my search. I execute my search and I have one entry. That's unusual. In any given search in your database, you're probably going to have 10, 100, or however many respond to the search parameters. And I get to look at the information there, but sometimes it can be very handy to click on a dashboard and actually visually see the information. For example, I have this particular indicator that's Toronto clients by segmentation, and I've got A, B, C, and D clients, but at the moment I only have A, B, and D that are identified. And look at that. I can visually see, okay, I have B clients, I have 8 of them. That's kind of really controlling this whole segment. I've got more B clients than I have any other, more B clients than I have the sum of the others. And I have 3 A clients and a couple of D clients. I don't care so much about these unless I can convert them, but these two guys here I should be paying attention to, particularly if I have a lot of those, but I want to move them more into this area here to A level. So I start thinking as I look at this bar chart, what can I do to move these people along? Well, the nice thing about this dashboard as well is I'm looking at it and saying, well, who are these people? Who are my A clients? I think I remember. If I click on that bar, Maximizer goes back to the address book and brings up the 3 entries that comprise the A list on that particular dashboard. And now I can look at them and say, oh, right, that's Ron from Maple Hill Sports and Entertainment and Manny from Bombastic Symbols. Okay, I really need to take care of those 2 guys more, or I'm going to right-click and I'm going to schedule a to-do. So I'm going to say, I want to get a hold of Manny, maybe not today, but you know what, I'm going to call him on Friday, and I'm just going to say here, call to discuss the old proposal. And I've gone through this process now, and this has reminded me of something I want to do with Manny, so now I put it in place, and I'm better off than I was before. I can go back to my dashboards, and what I want to show you now is just how easy it is to create these dashboards and to create the indicators within them. So this is a dashboard, various clients by segmentation, etc. Each one of these guys here is called an indicator, and you can modify how these indicators look. What you end up doing is clicking on this dashboard wizard. See that in that line right there? When you click on that, Maximizer says, what do you want to do? Create a new dashboard, edit a current one, create a new indicator, which is what these guys are, or edit an existing one. Well, if I wanted to create a new dashboard, I would put a radio button mark there. I'd go to Next. I'd give this dashboard a name of some kind. I would decide whether or not I wanted to be able to see it on my smartphone as well. Then I would go to Next. And now Maximizer says, great, you've created the concept, if you like, or an umbrella that we're calling a dashboard. But it's nothing unless you have indicators. So what's the name of the first indicator you want to see? So this is my first indicator. And at this point, I just follow through the process to pick what's going to be used as a saved search to be reflected in that indicator and so on. And I can show this to you better by canceling out of here entirely and taking a look at this indicator and modifying it. To do that, I go to Dashboard Wizard, I go to Edit an Existing Indicator, and it's the same as creating one. You'll see exactly the same choices. I go to Next, and which one do I want to modify? Well, I want to modify the Toronto Clients by Segmentation. That's the one I'm looking at there. So I've selected the indicator name. I've either created it new, or in this case, identified the one I want to modify. I click Next, and right now I'm using the bar chart. By default, it'll usually end up starting there anyway, and then you can choose which others of these you want to use. Today I'm going to say, well, you know what, maybe it'd be better to see this as a pie chart like this one over here. So I'll select that, and I'll go to Next. And I'm going to use a catalog search for my address book, but I could just as easily be using a catalog search, which is a save search, from campaigns, from customer service, from opportunities or quotas and sales. Customer service, opportunities, and address book are the ones you're going to use most often. They're the simplest to do and the simplest to understand. We'll stick with address book, and the save search to use, that's the next critical thing, is that one right there. I have the option to select any of these save searches, but what I'm interested in is Toronto Clients by Segmentation, which is kind of why I called it that indicator. I go Next. Is there a primary field? No, there isn't. Not in this case here. I'm just comparing two different things. I'm comparing the segmentation by city. The function is going to be record count rather than an average or maximum or minimum. I'm going to go to Next, and this is one place where you start to do some creative thinking as to how this indicator is really going to look. This screen, let me go back one here. Not so much this one. This is straightforward. I'm searching the address book. I'm using that save search. But from this screen onwards for the next, I think, 3 or so, is where you have to get your head around how this is going to look. And I would recommend that you play with this a bit, because it's conceptually it's simple, but it does kind of bend your mind a bit as you work with it. But the more you work with it, the easier it gets for you to do. My next screen says, how do you want to group these? Well, I want to group them by this user-defined field called segmentation. And if I click on this, I have access to all of my user-defined fields. You can see this up here, as well as, I think, many of my basic fields like address, etc. But what I'm interested in is that particular user-defined field where segmentation occurs. That's the one I want to use, and that's the one I've selected. Then I go to Next, and now I'm on this third screen, sort by record count, and this ascending or descending doesn't really matter. In this one here in the bar chart, I had selected descending, so it goes from there down to there. If I selected the other way around, ascending, the 2 would be there, 3 wouldn't change, the 8 and the 2 would change places, is what it amounts to. I go to Next, and I'm at my final screen. That's why I said those 3 are your critical ones. Once you figure out how they're supposed to work, at this point, if I was doing a brand new indicator, I would, probably by default as well as by choice, I'd be clicking there, produce a list in Maximizer to work with. In other words, when I click through either on each of these bars or piece of the pie chart, since we're creating a pie chart this time, I want to be able to see who comprises these particular bars. And if I click generally over in here, I'll get to see all the entries that comprise this particular indicator. In this case, because I've got an existing indicator, all I want to do is use the existing click-through. I could click Next or Finish at this point, same result, because all it does is take me to the finish screen where it says, yeah, I'm ready to view the result. We go through a screen refresh, and here's that same chart, but now it's done as a pie chart, like this one here. And I look at this and say, gee, that's a nice curly edge. I wonder if I can change that. Well, I can. I can right-click here, which brings up this Properties box, which allows me to change some things. I come over to Metrics, and instead of Gradient, if I uncheck that, and then click OK, I'll go through another brief refresh, and you'll see that nice shaded edge and so on is gone, and I'm seeing just a very flat screen depiction of these clients. Well, being a little bit artistic, I'm going to come back to right-click again, come back here, click on Gradient, click OK, and now I get this nice gradient look on each of the edges. Just to review, I'm going to change this back to a bar chart so you can see again how quick and easy this is. I click on Dashboard Wizard. First of all, Maximizer says, do you want to save the changes? I'll click OK. And now I'm going to go to Edit the Existing Indicator, go to Next. Nothing has changed. I want the same indicator, which is Toronto Client by Segmentation. I'll go to Next again. And this time I'm going to pick the bar chart. I'll go to Next again, and I'm going to use the address book, Toronto Clients by Segmentation. When I go to this next screen, I don't change anything here, none selected, record count. In my next screen, same thing, I'm grouping by segmentation, so it's segmentation within that city. And on my next screen, I'll change this to ascending instead of descending, still by record count. Go to Next, use the click-through, yep, go ahead and press Finish and go through the screen refresh. And now I'm back to the bar chart, except this time, of course, I'm going to be ascending in my values for the chart rather than descending as I had it before. That's the kind of things that you can do with dashboards. And again, remember, if I click here, anywhere in here, I end up with all of the entries comprised in that particular indicator, so I can look at them as I want to. There's my segmentation right there. I can sort by segmentation. There's my 2A's, 3A's rather, my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 B's and my 2 D's exactly as I expected to see. Now, is that a search I can undo? Let's find out. I can undo that search. In effect, it is. This one I can undo again, and I should get back to my 1. I can undo that search again, and I am back to my original group that I selected to use for training. Now let's move on to email templates. I'm going to come back over to my details window here. I've got Summers. Let's take Shirley Delgado. I'm going to click on her email address. This brings up the dialog box that allows me to write an email to her, or in this case, to create a template. The first thing I recommend doing is taking out her email address. That's not important, except I don't want to accidentally click send while I'm working here and accidentally send off to her a partially completed email template that would make no sense at all. But this is what I have to do to get this dialog box in order to create a template. There's 2 buttons here I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one. When I hover on it, it says Merge Field. This one over here, when I hover on it, says Template. And counterintuitively, I don't start with template, I start with the merge fields. Once I've put all the merge fields and text in here that I want, then I'll come back and click on template to save the template. And by the way, over here, if I click on this video button here, I'll have a chance to watch a video that'll show again everything I'm going to run through with you right here and now. So let's suppose that I've been at that conference. I'm going to say in my subject line, this is information from the conference. And it's going to be a specific conference, so I'm going to click on my Merge Field button here. I don't remember where to find it, so I'm going to just type CONF for conference, let Maximizer search for me, and it finds 2 results. Conferences attended, that's good, but this is better, most recent conference attended. In my database, this is a table field that's designated as having only a single value. So the items in that table field are all the conferences I have ever attended and where obviously I've met people, but the single value means that when I attach that user-defined field to an entry in my database, I also have to select which conference that person went to. If I've just come back from a conference on winter gear, for example, which I think is the one I'm using here, then I want to make sure that every entry that I'm sending this to, that's the most recent conference they attended with me. So I start by making that selection. Once it's selected, I click OK, and it now shows up in my subject line. Now I'm going to personalize this. I'm going to say hi, and I'm going to click on my Merge Field button again. This time I'm going to pick first name. I don't have to search for it. I know where to find that. I click OK. So this will say, Dear Shirley, Dear Sam, Dear anybody else, thanks, there we go, for visiting our booth at the, and I want the conference name again, so I come back to my Merge Field. I come over here and type in CONF, have Maximizer search for me, and there it is, most recent conference attended again. I select that, and then I say, here is the info I promised to send you. Let's talk soon. Warm regards. I will now go and save it to my template library by clicking on the template button, and I'll give it a name. I'm going to click Add, and I'll call this March 8 Conference Template. Full access to me for control, read access. So let me give it to everybody, so anybody else in the office can use this template as well if they want. If I'm a manager, I'm probably going to be encouraging them to do that as well. And there it is. It's logged down there in my list. And I just click Close, and I'm done. I can now go ahead and come out of this and work with this template. But before I do, I realize, you know what? I want to change this. Let's talk soon. That's not really good enough. That's too general. I'm going to say something like, I'll call you next week. That's better. That's going to be more like an action thing. It was great to see you there. Here's the information I promised to send, but I don't want you just throwing it away or sticking it somewhere. I'm going to call you because I think it's important that we talk about it. I've changed the template. I want to save my change. I click on the template again, and I click on this button that says Save, and I read this warning. Are you sure you want to update the selected template? Well, of course. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the template I want to update. No, it isn't. Cancel out of here and find the one I just created. There it is, March 8th conference template. Click that one, save that one, and yes, that's the one I want to update, and I close out. Now, the reason I emphasize that is because not too long ago, I didn't bother reading the message, and I just went and clicked OK, and I overwrote a perfectly good template with a totally different one that wasn't what I had intended to do at all. So whenever you get one of those warnings from Maximizer, take a few seconds and just read it. Even if you know it backwards and forwards, just make sure that you're doing what you want to do. So I've got the template now. It's the way I want to use it. I'm going to drop out of here and I'm going to apply it to people. So who have I got as contacts? I've got Shirley, I've got Dwayne, I've got this guy, Stepanovich. I've got those three. The other ones are companies. That's just going to be info at such and such a company. So these are the three that I want to send to. I've got 3 selected, and they're doing a stand-in for the 30, if you like, that I met at this conference. Now what I do is simple. I go to Actions, write an email. Takes me to this dialog box where I can then select all selected entries. I click OK. Maximizer now brings up the dialog box for the email, and it says up here, Merge to List, because that's what I told it to do under my preferences over here. I went to Preferences, Other Preferences, Email, and I said whenever I'm sending out a group email of any kind, I want to send it to each person separately. So that's what Merge to List means. And I know the first time you see this, you're wondering, will it really work like that? Well, send it to yourself and 2 other people, or use 2 different emails for yourself, whatever, and test it, because it does. Every recipient will see the email as if it was addressed to them alone and only. Now I go to my template button and select the template I want to use. So I come down here to my March 8th template. When I click Retrieve, Maximizer says, are you sure you want to replace the message content, which is what this is, with the selected template? I click OK, and now I'm there, exactly the way it was looking. You notice, by the way, I have this line here. If you'd like to unsubscribe from my emails, please reply to this email with unsubscribe in the subject line, and I'll take you off my list. That keeps me in compliance with CASL restrictions. In Canada, that's Canadian anti-spam legislation. If any of you folks are here from the States, you don't have that in quite the same way that we do, although I do know that there are U.S. companies that are taking advantage of this functionality to protect themselves in a similar way. And I'll show you about that when we get down to the admin level of things this morning. So now what I do is I go ahead and I can send this. But there's 2 other things I want to do. First of all, I'm going to make this a marketing email because technically it's not a service email, is it? A service email is a sort of a thing like, I don't know, dear so-and-so, we've noticed that your passenger side airbag has a tendency to deploy unexpectedly when you come to too sudden a stop at a stoplight. Please bring your car in and we will replace the sensor for that airbag at no cost to you. That's a service announcement. The government does not want to stand in the way of that kind of announcement at all. But if at the same time I said as part of that email, while you're here, we'd like to show you all the rest of our models, I'm sure you'll find one that you would like to buy from us. That's a marketing email, and they better have permission to send that along. I'm going to do this deliberately because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think I've got permission from all 3 of these people to send a marketing email to them. I want you to see what happens when I click OK. I'll click Send. First off, I get this. The following email addresses don't have consent for marketing email. It won't be sent to them. So this one guy, Dwayne, one of my 3 entries there, hasn't given me permission to do marketing email, so it's not going to go to him. So let's take a look under Documents what happened. I'll start with Stepanovich, and here I am, March 8th, info from the, oh dear, look at that, info from the, hi, thanks for visiting our booth at the blank. I didn't have him tagged with that user-defined field, so he's going to get an email that makes me look dumb. So let me drop out of that. I come down here to Dwayne. And of course, he didn't get an email. I'll do a refresh to make sure. Nope, he hasn't opted in for marketing email, so he got nothing. Let me come down to Shirley and see what she got. She got it correctly. Info from the 2016 Winter Gear Show. Hi Shirley, thanks for visiting our booth at that show. Here's the info I promised to send you. I'll call you next week and so on. So only 1 out of 3 of those emails actually went out the way it was supposed to and to the recipient properly. So this brings me to my recommendations for best practices in using email templates. First of all, I create a column setup where, look at that, I've got the user-defined field I'm going to use, and I also have this email opt-in type. I've got both. So I see, for example, that Stefan has opted in for marketing email, as has Shirley, but he has not been tagged with the most recent conference attended. On the other hand, DJ did attend that, but he hasn't opted in for marketing email. So in this case, it didn't go to him at all. In this case here, it went to him, but with a blank field in it, which of course does not look very good. But down here, it went to Shirley correctly. She had attended that conference, she'd opted in for marketing email, so she got the email properly. Whenever you create a template, one very good practice to follow is to make sure that you send it to yourself and a couple of friendlies in the office first, to make sure that the way it gets seen at the recipient end is what you intend. And then secondly, this best practices thing here as well, make sure that you create a column setup where you can see whether or not you have correctly tagged the people that you're going to be sending things to. I'm going to go to View, Column Setup, and there's by default the one I'm currently using. I'll go to Properties, and remember top to bottom here equals left to right out here in the real world if you like. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add, and I'm going to click Insert a Field. And the field I want is email opt-in type. So let me let Maximizer search for it. There it is. It's actually a basic field, isn't it? Email opt-in type. When I select that, it's selected. I click OK. Now it's there. That's that one right there. But, you know, in this column setup, will show up at the very end. And then I click Add again and add another field. And this one, remember, was for conference. And I search for it. And I find the one I want, most recent conference attended, I click OK, and now I've got that one too. Prove it, just slip from one down to the next. You see the name changes back again, so it has remembered properly, even though it just says new column. When I click OK, and I click Use Now, those two fields, of course I had them there already, but just to show you how I got them, I now have them over here as well. Most recent conference attended and email opt-in type. If you do these templates properly, it's going to save you a mountain of time because you're not going to have to do cut and paste. You're not going to have to do a BCC to try to get things to people that way. You'll be able to have a template that you can use. You can modify it from time to time. You can create as many of these templates as you want, and it's going to work very well for you. Let me show you two other quick things if I may. When I come back to my template, I'll pick that and retrieve it, give permission to replace. There it is. If I wanted to, I could compose part or all of this in HTML. I could add tables, I could add images, I could add hyperlinks. You can do any of those things. We would recommend that you get a good HTML editor if you're going to play with that, because all I've done for you here is just use plain text. I can modify colors and size and bold, italicize and so on. I can do all of those things. That's not actually coding HTML per se. And again, if you want to do that, get yourself a good HTML editor so you don't make mistakes and end up, you've seen this before from sometimes when people send a picture in their email and you have to scroll left and right and up and down to see the whole thing because they didn't size it properly. That can help prevent that problem. One other thing, one final thing. If I want to bold that entry right there and click bold, and then I come over here and say, you know what, I like the first name to be in red because I just think it ought to stand out. If I have bolded this, you'll notice I bolded the brackets around the user-defined field as well. So I've told Maximizer, go find the value for that field and then bold the result. Over here, I didn't include the brackets, so I told Maximizer, go find first name in red somewhere. That doesn't exist, so all I'm going to get there is a placeholder. I'm looking at Shirley, I'll click Send, and I'll just prove this to you. Let's come back to Shirley again, back to our Documents window, do a refresh to find the correct one. There's the second March 8, bring it up, And there it is. Hi, first name, just a placeholder, but the conference name is in bold the way I want it because I got the brackets around there bolded as well. Not sure if that's documented. Offer it to you for whatever value that might be to you as you go ahead and play with this. The next thing I'm going to go over with you is action plans. An action plan, which I get at by going to Administration and Action Plan Library, is simply a collection of tasks that have been put into a particular sequence to accomplish a particular goal. I'm going to create one with you right now today. We'll go ahead and click Add. And let's call this our March 08 Conversion Action Plan, AP. And the purpose is convert contacts to customers from a recent conference. That's just so other people know what I'm doing. And full access public, again, if I want to, I can keep the access to myself, but the read access public so anybody can use it. It really depends on how well things work in your office and what you want to do. Now again, I'm faced with this blank space here, but again, I've got an add button and I'm going to add a task. Well, the first task I'm going to do is send email with conference info. And that should actually be with promised information. I'm going to schedule this for a day after, one day after the planned start date. I don't care about the time on this because I can do this anytime that day. And what I'm thinking is this. Today is Wednesday. And let's say today is the first day I'm back in the office after a conference that was the weekend and Monday and Tuesday. And what am I doing? I'm catching up on emails and everything else that got left behind when I went out of town to attend this conference. Everybody I met there is doing the same thing. There is not a chance that I'm going to send an email to anybody today. So what I'll do is create the email template if I haven't already. I'll put all these people into my database. And then I'll say, tomorrow I will start the plan. So if I like, I can invoke the plan today, and tomorrow is when I'll be reminded to send out my first email. So I could do something like that. And it's a little more rational because it's a day or two later that people will start to receive emails from me, and that makes sense. And this task is assigned to the current user. I'll click OK, and I have now logged in my first task of this action plan. I click Add Task, and my next one also is call to follow up on the first email. And I want to make sure that they've got that email, see whatever questions they have, and see what else I can be doing to move them along this path of conversion. Well, I'll make this 3 days after the plans start. Again, I'll take out the time. And the reason for that is they get the email. I'm giving them 2 days to look at it, to maybe read the attachment that I send with it. Then I'm going to phone and follow up and see what's happened. So I'll go ahead and make that my second one. Perhaps during that call, I find that I'm going to have to send more information. So I'll just say send further info. And I'll make this for 4 days after the plans start. Again, it's timeless, and I'll click OK. Now I've got my third step in place. Maybe my next one is going to be simply check with my manager for ideas. We'll make that 6 days after, and since I know the manager likes to meet me at 11 in the morning, I'll put that down as a time, and I'll end up sending a note to him beforehand that this is what I'd like to do, etc. I've got only 4 things in here. For your particular business process, the way you try to move people from contact to customer, you may have 10 or 20 different steps that you follow, which is fine. You might be inviting them to your office, you might go to see them, you might have them come to the plant, you might send them samples, there's any number of different things you'll do. My point is simply this. Let Maximizer remember what you have to do next for each one of the people you're working with. Let Maximizer do the remembering. No post-it notes on your bulletin board or on your laptop, your screen, your computer, nothing like that. Just let Maximizer do the remembering for you. When you're done with as many of these as you need to, you click OK. Let's take a look at how we actually invoke it. I've got Shirley. I'm going to come down to our Activities window. I can right-click and schedule an action plan, all selected entries. I remember somebody asking me once, they wanted to invoke an action plan on probably, they said, this might be upwards of 1,000 people. Do I have to do them one at a time? And we said, nope, you can do it like this and deploy that action plan all at once to all selected entries. I click OK. Maximizer says, which action plan? So I click here to choose my template, and it's going to be my March 8th conference action plan. That's correct. There's that. And these two lines here are very important. If I click Advanced, that second line may not show. If it looks like this on your screen, set activity as a dependent. Yeah, that's right. Do this one before this one, before this, before this. But make sure you click on Advanced and make sure there's a check mark there to skip non-work days. That way, if you come up against a weekend for one of these steps in your action plan, Maximizer will automatically move it past the weekend and put it on to the next business day that's associated with the plan. So you've said, my second thing is to go 2 days after my first thing. That's 2 business days after. It'll skip the weekend and push it where it belongs. So tomorrow is when I'll get the reminder on that. That's Thursday. The next step would show up on Saturday, but Maximizer skips Saturday, Sunday, pushes it off onto Monday, and these other dates are passed there and adjusted at the same time. When I click OK, these tasks now show up in the activities window for each of the people that I selected up here. And again, those 3 stand in for 30. And over here on my hot list, let me scroll down to where I come to my March tasks here. There we go. March 9th, 3 of them, 3 identical tasks for the 3 people I selected. March the 13th, same thing, 3 and 3, and so on and so forth. If I go back to my address book, let's stay here with Stefan for a moment, and let's come down to this Send Further Info. I'm going to click on that, and instead of assigning it to me, I'm going to click the ellipsis button and assign it to Miranda Williams, my theoretical assistant. I'll click OK. And now when I click OK, Maximizer will say this task will not show up in your hot list, but it'll show up in hers. Do you want to continue? And I will click OK. Would you like to notify the assigned user by email? I've set that up again through preferences. I'll always click OK on that, because it gives me a chance for a second advice to Miranda that this task has come to her. If she checks her hot list window, she'll see it, but then also if she gets an email, she gets a nice second reminder that this has to be taken care of. I'll drop out of there and I'm done. Now let's look at the administrator function. We're going to click on Administration and click on Administrator. And the first thing I want to show you is CASL. So I'm going to come up here and click on System Fields. When I click on that, I then click the plus item next to Address Book, and I click the plus item next to Email Types. This is where I set the email types that are going to be subject to CASL compliance. These don't exist when I open the program. I have to click on Add New Value, give that particular email type a name, decide whether or not permission will be required. This is an either or, so one or the other, 1 or a 0. It's either not required or it is required. And remember, the only case in which it's not required is a service type announcement, really. If something is like a service announcement, you can probably get away with not having permission from the recipients. But you know what? This is put in place to help you save yourself from grief with any government administrator. So play it right, play it properly with this. If it looks like it could be a marketing email, then identify it as such and let Maximizer protect you. I click Save when I've done setting it up. On my service announcement, when I clicked on that, permission is not required. That's correct. And on the marketing email, permission is required, and that's correct as well. This one I just generated, I'll click it like that. I'm going to delete it, confirm the deletion, and it's gone. I'm left with those 3 again. Over here, email opt-in comment. You can put this in if you want. It's not essential. It's a piece of information that might be useful for you as you keep track of these things, where people are. Remember that implied consent means that somebody has either asked you for information, in which case you have a 6-month window to prospect them by email, or they've bought something from you, which gives you a 2-year window to continue prospecting them by email. Ideally, you get them to sign a little card or something that says they're giving you full consent to send them emails for whatever you want. And then also you have to provide the opportunity for them to withdraw that consent. So that's what that one is, consent withdrawn. And one of my guys added in this one, which is also kind of brilliant, unable to consent because parental consent is required. So I'm talking here in this case with a minor. We're selling skateboards or something like that, and we have to have parental consent for sending email because we can't get it from him, etc. Those things are informational. These ones down here are the ones that are required. When I'm done, I'm done. And once I make my changes, they're automatically available in my Maximizer database. The next thing I want to show you is the auditing. When I click on that, Maximizer gives me the chance to decide what I want to audit. So I can click here to edit the audit settings and put check marks in any of these 9 boxes or all of them as you see. Fields means user-defined fields and basic fields. Notes and documents are self-explanatory. By putting check marks there, I'm telling Maximizer to audit all changes. Let me go back to the address book here, and let me come down to the auditing window. And you'll notice that here I have a date when something was changed in this record, who made the change, what kind of a change it was, what was the object of the change, what field, and what the changed value was. So this is pretty detailed, and you can double click, click, or do anything, right click and try to do whatever you want here. You won't be able to affect this at all. This is a bona fide audit trail that cannot be modified, at least not here. When I come back to my administrator module and I'm in auditing, and I save my audit settings, Maximizer immediately begins to build a log file of my changes. I have the option to instruct Maximizer as to when I want this file deleted. If ever, I could go to 12 years, in which case this is going to grow to a humongous size. From time to time, if I want to, I also have the ability to click here and generate a report. So for example, today's the 8th. Let's generate a report just for today and see what that looks like. I can check all users, but it's only me using the database, so I can do it either as all users or as me. And when I click View Report, Maximizer opens another window, generates the report. This is what we've done today. This is a date and time stamp of when things were changed, who did the change, again, what, etc. And over here, the changed value. So this can be exported to Excel and saved, and a system administrator would want to do that from time to time just to keep track of how the database is being taken care of and managed. If you have an employee who's leaving, you may want to do some of this audit checking before they go and after they go, just to make sure that nothing was done in the process that would be inappropriate or detrimental to the company's interests. And I can select by Insert, Modify, or Delete. If I have a deletion item in here, Maximizer will tell me what was deleted. It won't save it, but I can see what the value was that was deleted, and that can also be very useful. So I'm finished with that. I'll pop it out, and I'm back over into my admin module, and let me go next over to users and just show you quickly a couple of user settings that I think are important. I'll highlight myself. I can change my password. I can check my preferences. When I click on my name, I bring up this dialog box here that can modify a lot of the things that you see over in Preferences, and I click on View Profile. This is the same kind of information here as I'm seeing over here, just this is probably a little easier to look at and work with. Now the one thing I want to do when I'm here is click on Access Rights, and I'm going to modify my user access settings. This now gives me a chance to change what I'm allowed to delete or what I'm not allowed to delete, whether or not I can use Global Edit, for instance, whether I can work with email templates, key fields, whether I can even read the audit log. If I have a blank value there, it means I cannot do that. If I have an X there, it means under no circumstances can I do it. So if I belong to a group or team that has permission to delete address book entries, it won't matter even if I'm part of that team, because here I'm being told that under no circumstances can I delete address book entries, and the program will respect that. Up here under Global Edit, in a multi-user office, even if your own for that matter, be careful, but I recommend that nobody be given permission for Global Edit until they're really competent with Maximizer and you know they're also a good faithful member of the company, because you can make a lot of changes to the database that are damaging, let's just put it that way. If I come over to my address book here, come to Edit and Global Edit, I'll give you an example. Years ago we came to 10-digit dialing. We were given 2 area codes, 604 and 250. And there were some bright lights off in the woods who thought that all I have to do is put 604 or 250 in the very beginning spot there on the phone number slot, and Maximizer will add that to all of the phone numbers in my database, and you know, Bob's your uncle. What it did, of course, was replaced all the phone numbers with just those 3 digits. And there were a couple of firms that didn't have a backup prior to making that global edit, and they essentially had, not essentially, they actually had to rebuild their database for phone numbers because they'd wiped everything out. So again, the advice is this: just be very, very careful what you're doing with global edit. The routine recommendation I make is this: Let's suppose I've been to that conference, and instead of picking up 30 entries, I picked up 300, and I want to tag all of them with some value down here, segmentation, for example, or first contact or whatever. I can do that, but I recommend, if I've got 300 I'm doing it to, do it to 1 or 2 entries first using Global Edit and see the result. If what you get is what you expect and what you want, then you've got a pretty good probability that when you do that to the other 298 entries, you'll still be pleased with the results. Again, like anything else in database management, it's just being smart. It's the old adage they used to use in woodworking. Do you remember that? Measure twice, cut once. Same concept here as well. Back over the administrator module, we've talked about creating email templates. You need a check mark there. You need a check mark in key fields. The audit log's not quite as important, but you definitely want them there if you want to be able to use those particular utilities. Now the last thing is under Preferences and Address Book. And this little tab we've created in this last release, Date Last Contacted, Automatic Update. If I click on that and modify my options, I have the chance to put a check mark against any or all of these items here. What that does is it says this: if I want to keep track of the date last contacted, the last time I touched a record with somebody, I can have Maximizer automatically keep track of that by checking these things. I complete an appointment with them, yep. An email is sent from Maximizer, yep. A call is made, received, and recorded in Maximizer. That's that thing over here, you know, where you're back here. Go to Actions, I make a call, I receive a call. That's where that comes in, and so on. Okay, these are things where if I do these things, I have touched that contact and I want to make sure that I have a record of the fact that I did that, and that's my last date contacted, and Maximizer will automatically update that for you when you make those particular selections. That's kind of it. There's a lot of other things that are worth looking at in the administrator module. If you're responsible for it, you need to look at it. If you're not, it's a curiosity, and if you have permission, go in there and take a look, but be careful when you do. Now let's take a look at converting contacts to individuals, converting individuals to companies, and merging duplicates. Let me go to Highly Effective Consulting. I'm down over here, and let's pick Heather Daisy. So I've got Heather here, and what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to make a check mark there. I'm going to do a search and retrieve the contacts. I'm going to take the check mark out of that company, and I'm going to find Heather. There's Heather right there. Heather has been very ambitious, very aggressive in building a client base for this consulting company, and while she's not going to take clients with her, she has nevertheless realized that she could do this on her own and probably do a lot better, make a lot more money than she's making there with her company. So she approaches the boss, Sandra Flower. Heather said, Sandra, I want to go out on my own. And Sandra says, fine, you know, you've been great here, really appreciate it, let's stay in touch. If you ever change your mind, let's talk about having you come back. So Heather says, great. So we select Heather. We come over to Edit, and what we do is convert her to an individual. So do you want to do this? Yes, I do. So now what's going to happen, would you like to use the existing address? I can click yes or no on here. I'll just go ahead and click yes for sake of argument for the moment. And now I have an individual that's Heather. Look at that. There she is. And there's high-end consulting and highly effective. I'll make that list current now just so I don't worry about any of the others. And I've got them all. So Heather goes along and she changes her name first of all, of course. She comes here. In fact, I don't think I need high-end consulting. I'm just going to use Heather and highly effective. So I'll make that edit, make selected list current, and select and deselect. And Heather ends up calling herself, instead of highly effective, she calls herself alternative consulting. So she's in alternative consulting. She's Heather, and her position, let's just call her writer. That'll do for now. And I click Save. So Heather now is out on her own, doing business as alternative consulting. And eventually Heather finds that her business is growing so fast she needs to have other people. So she goes up here and hires somebody. And let's go to Edit, and we're going to add a contact for Heather. And we'll call this person Bill Smithers. We'll give him a flower name, and we'll click OK and save. And now we have over here, we have Heather Daisy and we have Bill Smithers. That's the company. She's a contact, she's an individual, and she's hiring people. Her business grows further, and she decides that what she should be is doing business as a corporate entity rather than just under her name. So we pick her, we go to Edit, Convert Individuals to Companies. and you're about to make the conversion. Do you want to? Yep, go ahead. So it's now converted. And now we have alternative consulting. When we hover there, we have two people. We have Heather Daisy and we have Bill Smithers. Well, time goes on and Heather adds more people to her business. Highly Effective Consulting continues to grow. And Sandra Flower and Heather have stayed in touch. They're competitive, but they're also cooperative. And eventually the two of them look at each other and they say, you know what? We know we can do this. Maybe we should get back together because I think we can do it better together. And Heather says to Sandra, I have to make more than I was making there before. And Sandra says, no problem. Let's bring you back into the fold. You're going to be my senior vice president or vice president of development or something like that, and augment your salary and bonuses, et cetera, et cetera. Bring your people with you because I know you only selected good people. Let's merge these two businesses together. And she says, great, let's do it. So under alternative, I'm going to go to Bill Smithers for a moment. I'm going to go to the notes field here and I'm going to add a note to Bill's record. And all I want to do is say this is a note before the merger and click OK. I just want to show you that that goes over with him when this merge occurs. Combine these two and think of these, if you like, as being duplicates. And I'm going to change her name now to Highly Effective Consulting so I can combine it and I'll show you what happens. So I'll come here to Alternative. I'll come down to Alternative Consulting, come to Edit, and I'll give it the name it's going to have, which is Highly Effective, right? Highly Effective Consulting. And I click Save. Well, look at that. Now we have two entries with the same name. We have a duplicate in our database. How do we handle it? I'm going to handle it by merging the two together. Which is going to be the target? Which will be the recipient? Well, good grief, I've gone and named them both the same. How do I tell? I've got my identification number here for both of these. That's why I put that in that column setup. And the first 6 digits of an identification number are the year, month, and day when that entry was made into the database. So I can see this is the older one, done in September 2016. This one was done in March of 2017. I'll make this one the target, and I'll merge the source into the target. So this Highly Effective is going to be merged into that one there. I make a selection of the two, and I make sure I'm highlighting the target. Then I go to Edit and Combine Selected Entries. See that? Maximizer says, do you want to create an alternate mailing address from the addresses in the source entry? So I've got this one here, source, and let's suppose that for Heather's company, we actually ended up with her working at a different premises. Maybe we have to keep track of those premises for a while as an alternate mailing address until things settle down and sort out, and that's fine. I can tell Maximizer to do that, to keep that address valid for me for a period of time, and we'll make decisions regarding it later. That's all good. But this next box here, I recommend not checking. Delete the source after merging is completed. No, don't do that until you finish the merge and you can check to make sure you haven't lost any data. Now I click OK. Maximizer combines those two entries, and I can prove that by, let's deselect all of these, and let's click on this Highly Effective, this one here, which was the target. I come down here, and Heather Daisy is there again. See, writer, that's how I designate her. She's there. And Bill Smithers is there as well. I click on Bill, I click on his notes, and there's the note before the merger, so everything came over with him. What I really would be checking is phone numbers and email addresses. If the entry for Bill Smithers existed in both companies, and because of it being a true duplicate situation, then Maximizer would recognize those names and would merge those contacts as well. And that's why I say you want to make sure that you haven't lost any information before you do a deletion. Well, looks to me like everything's come over properly. I now select the source and I right-click and delete it. Get the warning, listen to it, click OK, and it's gone, and I'm there where I need to be. I can go to search, retrieve the contacts for this company, and I end up seeing everybody in place. There's first name, there's Heather Daisy, and there's Bill Smithers, and of course Sandra Flower, etc., etc. Everybody's there as I expect to see them. That's how easy it is to combine and merge duplicates. And the final thing we want to take a quick look at is reporting. Well, the simplest thing that we've got for reporting is this guy right here, which is an export to Excel. If you worked with Maximizer in the old days, you could do this, but you had to jump through some interesting hoops. Now all you have to do is one mouse click, exporting to Excel, I have to save and open to get past my security, and there I've got. Click Enable. I've got an Excel spreadsheet with all the entries where I was looking at here in my main window in Maximizer, and the headers that I've got along here are my column setup that I was using, and if there was anything here that was numerical, like dollar values of things, Excel would automatically sum them up for me as well. I can play with it as I would with any other Excel document, and that's that simple. I have other reports that I can click on here. I can create a note report, a consolidated activity report. This incoming and outgoing calls report can be very useful. If you have a boss who says, what have you done? Who have you talked to? Let me report all dates and loadings. Bayard, Ian, and Luis, we've made these calls. These were incoming, these were outgoing, and we can see that there were quite a number of each that were done and recorded, etc. I can check the details on these, and I can start digging down. I can burrow down into these particular calls, particularly any one call I want to, and go deeper yet. And of course I can print any of this stuff out that I need to as well. So that can be a useful report in some circumstances. Under opportunities, when you reviewed those in the intermediate training, you were probably shown this report, which is the pipeline report, and you know that you have to select a process. I'll just pick the default process for now. Group by leader, update the report. There it is. And I have a funnel showing where my business is, all my opportunities are at the moment at least. And this can be useful if you're checking where you are vis-a-vis other people in the company or the company in the industry or the industry in the country, etc. If the relationship between commitment to buy and negotiation, for example, is correct here, around about $200,000 in each, if that's a good ratio to have, and still up here have about $300,000 where you're making presentation, and almost $300,000 at a needs assessment. If that's the right kind of a relationship for your business, then you'd be in pretty good shape with this thing right here. I can go all the way over to the end page, and I want to show you the final page on this particular report. Let me just open this up so it's easier to see and scroll down here. It shows me the total number of entries. That's the 57, which is exactly what it was. And my total revenue is estimated about 3 million, and my weighted revenue is about 1 million. Number there is simply a calculation of revenue at any one of these levels times the percentage that corresponds to the step in the sales process that I'm at. So if I'm at a commitment to buy, I think in this particular database that's set at 79%. So under commitment to buy, this 7,500 here is 79% of that 9,500, and yeah, it says it right there. That's it, probability 79%. So 79% of that equals that, 79% of that equals that, and so on and so forth. And then over all of the steps, using the same concept and process, I end up with about $1 million of weighted revenue against 3 million of forecasted revenue. And again, if that's consistent with my historical experience and consistent with my industry, then I'm on track and I am where I need to be. If not, then it certainly is a way for me to check my status and see what I need to do to improve my situation. So there we are, folks. Those are kind of the critical things I wanted to cover with you today. If any other questions occur to you, please feel free to ask. Our objective is to make sure you understand Maximizer and are able to use it well. And I wish you all the very best. Have a great day, and bye for now.